Hello and welcome to lesson 1 of a journey into masculine and feminine energy union. Now, this union is something that our ancient ancestors have been talking of for over 10,000 years and is the path to feeling really happy, the path to freedom. It's also the path to love and abundance, which is the same energy and is the secret to really remembering who you are and why you're here. It's been neatly packaged into this course, but each topic can really be discussed for many, many, many hours. But for the purposes of this course, I'd like to really shed light on the major aspects of what this union is all about. Now, whether you know it or not, the whole purpose of you being here is to come into union, is to have an experience of unconditional love, to have an experience of abundance, and to really remember that you can create this from the inside out. And so this course is really designed to help you to remember who you truly are. It's not just about love, although I would like to argue that everything that we do is for love. Everything that we do is for a feeling, whether it be to earn £1 million or whether it be to have the perfect house or to have the perfect job. All of it boils down to how it's going to make you feel. And that feeling that we're always looking for is unconditional love. And so, however you choose to describe this, whether you choose to describe it as the twin flame journey, whether you choose to describe it as the path to abundance, whether you choose to describe it as inner union, it's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. So please don't get too caught up in all of the technicalities, but try and really pay attention to the principles and what we're trying to actually achieve from this, which is a state of liberation within. Now, all of us have spent many, many years, decades, and even lifetimes unlearning what is true, unlearning our true nature. And as we progress through the course, hopefully it'll become clearer to you why this is important. The first stage is knowing. Without knowing, we cannot apply. And without knowing our true nature, without understanding how we work at the very core of our being, at the level of energy, it's really difficult to break free of patterns of stagnation, repeated patterns, frustrating patterns, unless we really understand why and how things work. And so this is why I believe this course to be very important, because without knowing how life works, how do you change it? And so this whole 5-session journey is going to shed light on that. So first of all, I'd like to remind you that every single aspect of this course is important. It's really important that you pay attention to all of it. Try not to skip bits. I've tried to condense decades of learning into a package. And so I've chosen what I believe to be the core aspects of what I've learned, and tried to really condense it down. So if you do miss any aspects, you'll be missing really key understandings. And these are really important as you move forward. But this is also the process that I used to come into union myself with love, and is also the the tried and tested aspects of what I did and what worked for me and what didn't work, I've left out. So I've really tried to knuckle down to bring you the really important key aspects of really finding that sense of freedom within. How to move away from feeling like you're in control and letting something greater, a higher form of intelligence, letting that take over, which knows best. And the key is when we start to really trust this aspect of ourselves, then we move into a state of flow and things start to magically unfold. So let's begin by, first of all, coming into and landing fully into this space. So to begin with, I'd ask you to close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. And really give yourself permission to take part in this course, to be here. Just disconnecting from anything that has taken your attention throughout the day. Releasing all that doesn't belong to you, any thoughts, any fears, any energies that do not belong to you. And calling back all of your own energy. Calling it back into your body. And breathing deep into this present moment, into your body, which is where life truly exists, in the now. Not in the thoughts of the future, not in the memories of the past, which are all figments of the mind. But life exists now, right now. So just take a few deep breaths here and allow yourself to sink deeper and deeper into your body. Feeling your feet on the ground. And really opening yourself up to receiving the energy, the information that's going to be presented to you today. And tuning into your heart, which is the greatest compass for you. And receiving all that resonates. And mentally declaring that you are ready for this inner union. That you're ready for love. That you're ready for abundance. Inviting it in now. And taking a final deep breath in. And releasing any tension on the out breath. And then when you're ready, coming back into the space again. So welcome to this course. And throughout this course, we're going to be going through a number of things which will become clearer as the course goes on. So please don't worry if there's anything that you don't fully understand at this stage. I'd invite you to keep coming back to the course so that you can really get clearer on the concepts. And whenever you feel off center, or you feel like you've lost your way with finding unconditional love, finding abundance, finding your true self, please feel free to come back and re-watch these videos, as they can act as a reminder when we feel lost. So we're going to be going through a number of different things. We're going to start by understanding energy. This course is to do with masculine and feminine energy. So we're going to look at the nature of energy. This is a little sciencey, which is my background, but I've tried to simplify it to make it easy to understand. So what is energy and where does it come from a spiritual perspective? We're going to be looking at masculine and feminine energy. We're going to be looking at clearing blocks to the union of masculine and feminine energy within. The traditional Namaste sign is the coming together of two parts, which refers to masculine and feminine energy, the two aspects of ourselves. And we're going to look at how we can use this energy to manifest your dream life. Quite often we use energy to worry. We use energy to focus on what's already gone, or thoughts and fears of the future. But when we use energy in a powerful way, in an expansive way, that's when things start rolling into our lives. So it's all about learning how to use our own energy to create, because that's what we are. We're creators. We're constantly creating. We're constantly focused on something mentally. And that means we're channeling energy in the direction of something, whether it be worry or whether it be expansion. But we're going to do it consciously so that we can get desirable results. And again, this will all become clear as the course goes on. And I just wanted to mention that these ideas and beliefs, although they have been documented for tens of thousands of years, it's the basis of all spirituality. These are still my own personal views. Of course, these views have helped me and many others in really wonderful ways. But all the thoughts that are shared in this course, they're my own. And they're certainly not a substitute for perhaps getting medical advice or seeing, medical professionals. But I firmly believe that this is the path to freedom, path to wellness, path to wholeness. And these are principles that I've been not only studying for the majority of my life, but also practicing with really amazing results. So let's start by looking at energy. So the nature of energy is that it likes to move. It desires to flow. Energy makes up all aspects of life. All physical matter is made up of energy. But when certain particles and atoms and energy, the building blocks of energy come together, they lock into each other. And that's what creates form. But before that locking of energy, energy is free flowing and wants to flow. Whenever this energy becomes stagnant, we get form. But when it gets stagnant in the body, we feel the effects of this lack of flow. Spiritual energy, the energy in the body, doesn't want to be still. And wherever it becomes still, wherever it becomes stagnant, we start to experience a lack of ease or dis-ease. They're the areas where we may find the starting of illness in the body, and is the basis of a lot of Asian medicine, like acupuncture, reflexology, anything that is concerned with moving energy in the body is the medicine involved with removing blocks, anything that has become stagnant. And so wherever we feel stagnant within, those aspects are reflected into the external world, not just in the body, but also in our life experiences. One of the principal laws of nature, which is the law of correspondence, dictates that whatever we hold within, we also hold without. And so the movement of energy in the body, as is very well documented, is one of the basic principles of wellness. And by moving stagnant energy in the body, we start to come into alignment with health and our nature, our true nature. So let's look at how energy flows in and out of the body. So energy flows up and down through your body, from your head down to the base of your spine, and back up from the base of your spine up to the crown, the top of your head. So this pattern we can see moving up through the earth, coming back round, and also the other way around. So we see energy move in this ring donut fashion, up and down through the body. And this energy is also known as your aura. Your aura extends many, many feet outside of your body and is measurable. The Heart Math Institute have proven the existence of this energy. But not only is that energy extended out from the body and from the planet, we can see it in other aspects of nature as well. So we can see it in the shape of certain fruit, vegetables. We can see it in the aura of the human body. And also we can see it extended out from planets or the sun. So all matter comes from energy. Energy is the building block of all matter. And so wherever energy flows, matter grows, or matter goes. And so it's very important to remember that energy has a pattern of movement. And all things in nature has a pattern. This pattern is very precise, it's mathematical, it's geometric. And when there's a disruption in the pattern of this energy, we also notice a disruption in the matter that follows. So, soul, the human soul, is also a form of energy that is concerned mainly with freedom and flow. As we discussed earlier, energy wants to flow. Energy wants to be free, especially the soul. The soul wants liberation. And these states of flow are actually natural states of our being. In nature, energy is always moving. Nothing really in nature is still. Even when we look at the human body, every single atom is vibrating. No atom is touching each other. If we were to condense all of the matter, the actual physical matter of the body, it would all fit into the size of a pinhead. And so the fact that we think that we're still on a moving planet is an illusion. Flow is the natural state of our being and of everything. And the stagnation in this flow within leads to the stagnation of our experiences of life in the external. Life is a mirror, and we can look externally to really see what needs shifting internally. And this is how life never is truly punishing us. Quite often we go through difficult times and we think, why is life doing this? But actually everything is a reflection of the stagnation that we hold within. And it's a clearing of the stagnation that this course is concerned with. Changing the external, changing our external circumstances without looking internally is almost like cleaning a mirror in order to change the reflection of you in it. Sometimes we scrimp, we scramble, we struggle to change life. We grasp at things. But those types of endeavors never really have a long-lasting, sustainable effect. In order for us to create lasting change, lasting positive change, we have to look within. That is the source of the reflection. And so, in the same way, we can't wipe a mirror or clean a mirror to change our reflection in it necessarily. We have to change our own appearance to change the reflection. It's also important to look within to see what needs changing in us when we're trying to change our lives for the better. Life really is a mirror, which is seen in nature as within, so without, as above, so below, as in heaven, as on earth. So this is important to remember because it reminds us that we are actually powerful, that we are not at the mercy of something outside of ourselves, that we have the power to change our lives. And we can see this in life. There's millions of examples of this, from people who have lost their limbs to winning the Olympics, to those who have turned their lives around from having nothing. This is a true, these examples are true indicators of the power of the human spirit, the power of looking within. Those who look within awaken. So going back to life in general, as I mentioned earlier, when we look at the core building blocks of life, if you look at any kind of material, whether it be the screen that you're watching this on, or your phone, or the seat that you're sitting on, there are multiple dimensions that exist. If you look at your chair under a microscope, you will see that all aspects of the chair are made up of atoms. And these atoms are 99.9% empty space. This takes you back to perhaps GCSE science, where you have your nucleus and electrons that go around the nucleus. But most of this atom is space, empty space. And these atoms connect up. They join together. But in reality, they're not touching at all. They're not joined at all. They're held together through energy, through an invisible force. When you touch an object, you're never really touching it. There's space in between. And so life is full of these various dimensions. Even we are made of different dimensions. If we see our human form as this tiny, the smallest Russian doll, there are different aspects of our energy, like our aura, that extend out. And so we are not limited. We have an influence on everything. Everything is fluid, which means we can change it. We can work from the dimension of energy internally to have an effect on what we actually experience in the physical world. So feeling as though you're stuck or that life is difficult to change is an illusion. We're constantly affecting this flow. And we'll be looking more closely at how we do this as the lessons go on. So what is flow really about? Flow is really about surrendering to nature, which is in a state of flow. It's about removing ourselves from in between, removing our own sense of control or influence so that nature, or in certain traditions, the Tao or the way, can take over. We're learning to remove the small aspects of ourselves from the equation so that the larger aspects can take over. And those larger aspects are more intelligent. They see the bigger picture. And so flow is about aligning really deeply with nature. When energy is not flowing, as you mentioned before, we're not flowing in life either. And we may experience lots of external resistance, such as repeated or difficult circumstances, repeated patterns. Sometimes people may experience the same types of people over and over again in their lives. And perhaps even the same types of relationships over and over again. And it leaves people wondering why that is. But the main reason why that's happening is because there is something within us that needs shifting. A way of seeing that prevents the flow that needs shifting. And if we don't listen, or we're not unable to listen or understand, then we may even experience things like the dark night of the soul, which is where we can feel real despair. Until we actually remember and recognize how powerful we are, we will keep meeting resistance. And generally, when we're not flowing with nature, there's an overall lack in wellness, in happiness, in abundance, and in love. But when your energy is flowing with nature, which is a higher form of intelligence, we can really experience true wellness and abundance. Because nature itself is naturally abundant. If you look at the flowers, the trees, meadows, the mountains, when things are in balance and human beings aren't getting too involved, then there is only abundance. And so what we're really trying to do is we're trying to align with this part of nature, this part of natural wellness, so that we can flow in the same current as the energy of creation. We're trying to move downstream rather than struggling like fish moving upstream. We want to move with nature. And that happens when our energy is in alignment with it. So we've looked at how energy moves. We've looked at how energy moves in nature. We've looked at alignment of energy and what it can mean for us. We've also looked at how there really isn't anything other than flow in nature. Things are fluid, even matter. There's energy flowing between us and everything else. And so now let's look at what happens when energy flows in our bodies. And this is supported by a study that was carried out at Aalto University in Finland. And the study is called emotional mapping. That's nice. And in the study, it was shown that different emotional states, when looked at closely, represented different energetic states. So as you can see in these images here, we can see different emotions like anger, fear, happiness, love. And the brighter the colors, the more heat that is generated in the body. When there's more heat, there's more energy. And so, as you can see here, when somebody's in love, they generate more heat, which means they have a greater level of energy inside their body. But when somebody is depressed, there's very little heat in the body, and therefore very little energy. And so this study showed that heightened emotions leads to heightened energy. And so having more energy in the body also lifts our emotional state. And so taking an interest in what happens to the energy in our body has a direct impact on how good we're going to feel. And as we'll soon see, how good we feel has a direct impact on the experiences that life mirrors back to us. So let's look at where energy actually comes from as we continue to understand energy before moving on to the masculine and feminine energies within us. This is all really important background information because quite often we ignore energy. We ignore our own energy. we ignore a huge piece of the puzzle. The creation of everything comes from energy. And so understanding how it works, where it comes from is really important. So where does all energy come from? All energy comes from the starting point or source, whether you choose to call it the Big Bang or the inception point of creation. All energy came from source. I actually believe that energy came from before the Big Bang. That's as far back as science can take us. And a branch of this source energy, that starting point, is the soul. At the core of your being, you are energy. As we discussed earlier, all matter comes from energy. Energy does not come from matter. And so at the core of your being, you are energy. You are your soul. Your soul is a unique aspect or branch of source energy. So when we leave this realm, we're going to lose our physical body. We're going to lose our mind. What we're going to be left with is the soul. Now, science very clearly tells us energy never dies. It only changes form. And what I find extremely interesting is that when the human embryo is developing, the heart starts to beat fast. And then the brain develops. The heart is considered the seat of the soul. And so before the brain even develops, before the organ that we rely on for intelligence even develops, there's a higher form of intelligence that makes the heart beat. And so we spend a lot of time placing a lot of importance on the brain. But actually, the heart holds a greater form of intelligence that develops well before the brain. And it's the intelligence of the soul. And this is what we're trying to always align with, this part of nature that is intelligent and abundant. We're trying to detach from the mind, which is limited, which is effectively an operation system. It's just a very optimized computer. And we're trying to align with the intelligence of the soul and the heart. We're trying to surrender to that. In many spiritual cultures, traditions, they talk of losing the mind to find the soul. And this is what actually allows us to find love, thinking less. So anything that you see in life that holds life energy comprises of an infinite number of tributaries that extend from source energy. So if you imagine source energy is where all energy comes from, you are a branch, an extension of source energy that's come through multiple dimensions, like the Russian dolls. to become a human being. And throughout those lifetimes, you have accumulated various patterns of energy. Some of them are useful. Some of them hinder you from living your most expanded life. But it all extends from source energy, a pure form of energy that we're always trying to make our way back to. We're trying to move beyond distortions of energy and move into alignment with a pure form of energy, which is source energy, which we all hold within. So let's talk about how it all began. So whether you choose to call it the Big Bang or source, in the beginning, source energy, which was pure consciousness. In other words, it hadn't become anything. It was just pure energy, decided to expand itself. And it did this because expansion is the nature of the universe, but also because without this type of expansion, everything would be unmanifest. It would just be energy. There would be no form. And so it wouldn't be the most expansive experience of life. It also did this to experience itself. When something is just raw energy with no form, there is no experience in that. In the same way you can read up on what an apple tastes like. You can read up on the texture of an apple. You can read up on all the different flavors without actually tasting an apple, without actually having an experience of tasting an apple. You're just a concept. An apple is just a concept. And so source energy, which is the highest form of intelligence, decided it wanted to experience itself and all of its infinite forms. And so it sent out energy from what is known as singularity, which is unmanifest. And it decided to create duality. One became two. So duality is the reality that we live in that allows us to experience all of life. Up allows us to experience down. Hot allows us to experience cold. Dark allows us to experience light. We need duality. We need both ends of a spectrum in order for us to have any form. Hard allows us to experience soft. The yin and the yang aspects. So life went from pure nothingness, but also everything. Nothingness and everything was one, singularity, and it extended out to create duality, the yin and the yang aspects. So this singularity consciousness or oneness extended into duality. And Source did this for the purpose of expansion. In the same way you have an elastic band that stretches, you need to be able to cast out energy in order for you to experience the spectrum in between. So Source expanded itself to create more. Source is the creator, whether you call it Source or God. The creator of all that is has to expand in order to create and to also experience itself. In the same way, you need to eat an apple to experience it instead of it being a concept. And we, like Source energy, are translators and creators. We are masters of energy. When you see something with your human eyes, all you're doing is translating information. When you hear music, you're translating, you're decoding information, a packet of energy that is being translated by you to understand it. So we are constantly translating information, and we're constantly creating through this translation of energy. And so when we understand our conditioned emotional responses, i.e., the middleman, the middle ground where the translation occurs, we tune into a really high form of intelligence. When we take ourselves out of the way, out of the middle, when we understand our habitual ways of being, we can clear them. And so we become a clear channel for a higher source of information that isn't being translated using outdated methods. And so we become more open to this information when we move out of an unconscious way of being. We clear the channel for higher intelligence. And we can tune into and go back up these tributaries, back up to source energy. And we can consciously use this energy to create very desirable results. So the human mind, as we discussed, is a very effective, optimized processor. But in order for us to remember our true nature, we have to tune into something higher than the mind. And we do that by remembering our true nature. So the purpose of life is to balance ourselves and align ourselves with this higher intelligence. And how do we do that? We have to remember that we are energy and matter, that we are the physical and the spiritual, that we are the mind and the heart, that we are our lower selves, which is the mind, the physical body, the smallest doll in the Russian doll set. But we're also divine. If this is the human body, this prism, we have energy coming into us, which is translated, reflected, out into the world, that we are both aspects. We are aspects of ourselves that we project, but we are higher intelligence. And to bring them both together is how we come into alignment with the soul. We mustn't forget that we are both, that we are the yin and the yang. And that is how we come into alignment with our purpose, because we get information from higher intelligence, a form of guidance that goes beyond the limited human mind. The human mind is just a store of information. As I quite often say to my clients, the human body has the ability to remember the facial features of your ancestors, but the human mind cannot go that far back. And so there's a form of intelligence that lies beyond the human mind that we have access to, that we must tune into to guide us. We must tune into the wisdom of the heart, the wisdom of the soul to guide us if we truly want to experience love and abundance. And so the spiritual journey and this course is concerned with aligning with your soul. It's merging duality, like in the prison. It's merging duality, which we'll come to see soon, is masculine and feminine energy into oneness, singularity. Going back up, all of those tributaries back up to the soul. So the spiritual journey is when duality merges with singularity. And we remember our higher connection. And that is the energy of abundance. That's the energy of love. And so as we discussed earlier, singularity extended into duality. Oneness, nothingness, everything, whatever you want to label it, is singularity. It was no form. It was neither hot nor cold, neither black nor white, neither up nor down. Extended into duality. That duality is yin and yang, broadly speaking, or, for the purposes of this course, masculine and feminine energy. Oneness became masculine and feminine energy. So what happens when we trace our way back through all the layers of conditioned ways of being? We go back up to higher intelligence. What are the benefits? First of all, we enter into a slipstream when we align with the soul. When we unify duality, two aspects of life, and effectively the two aspects of ourselves, we come into oneness. And that is the path to really tuning in to the higher aspects of you, the ones that lie beyond the mind. That's alignment with the soul. That's alignment with nature. But these are the benefits of aligning with the soul. Higher connection, as we discussed. Communication or communion. Guidance and inspiration. So all forms of inspiration, whether it be an artist creating new art, whether it be the invention of a new technical gadget or device, whether it be art or music. It all has to come from a place beyond the human mind. Otherwise, all we're doing is repeating what already exists in the world. And so in order for us to gain inspiration, we have to go beyond the human mind. We quite often hear of musicians who get lost in their music for hours and hours and hours, lose all concept of time. They're tuning into their higher selves, higher form of guidance and inspiration, which they then bring down into the physical world. So when we're aligned with the soul, we're aligned with this higher guidance and inspiration. And this guidance not only brings art into the world, but it brings guidance on your next steps, what you should be doing, the path to take, all of the positive hunches. These are all forms of higher communication that guide you towards love, that guide you towards your abundance. And they come from beyond the limited human mind. Aligning with the soul means your psychic gifts come online. We're all psychic, we're all intuitive. But when the brain has been repeating processes for you to go through, when you've been doing the same processes year in, year out for decades and decades and decades, the brain is then in charge. It calls the shots. It's in the driving seat of your life. And this doesn't leave much room for your intuition or your psychic gifts to work or be active in your life. And so when we connect with the soul and move beyond the mind, then that's when we start to really become aware of our psychic abilities. That could be thinking of a friend and they call you. Or that could be tuning into how someone's feeling. These could be premonitions, these could be clairvoyance, this could be clairsentience, all sorts of psychic gifts come online. And these are your divine gifts that we all have. When we align with the soul, we consciously manifest desirable results instead of the unconscious manifestation of results, such as conscious partnerships, conscious relationships. Rather than doing things from a conditioned way of being, that quite often comes from trauma, we start to really consciously start channeling energy in the direction of what we truly want. We align with unconditional love within, because we align with source energy, which is the energy of unconditional love. It's also the energy of unconditional abundance. And so when we align with this higher energy, we start to see the reflection of that in our lives. We start to see unconditional love come into our lives. And that is the whole twin flame journey. As within, so without. We first have to hold the energy of that within. We start noticing signs and synchronicities, number patterns, which become undeniable. They're undeniable, very difficult to explain at times. And arguably one of the greatest advantages is the sense of peace and wellness within, health, wholeness, and the unfolding of your highest timeline. Your greatest life starts to unfold. In the same way you can tune into different radio stations on a radio, you start tuning into a higher frequency channel and you start living that channel. All dimensions exist. Multiple dimensions exist. As we saw earlier, even in the crude example of a chair. The chair has multiple dimensions. One that you sit on that allows you to take a seat, and the other where the atoms are barely even touching, where the atoms and building blocks are empty space. Both dimensions exist, both very different, but they're both here. And we also have multiple dimensions that are here that we can tune into purely by aligning with the soul, which is what we're going to be looking at. And the alignment of the soul is really about bringing together duality, or masculine and feminine energy. We also experience freedom from suffering and elevated emotional states because of this increased flow of source energy through us. We're no longer blocking ourselves, which is really the diagnosis. We block ourselves. And this energy then starts to flow through us, which lifts our emotions, as we saw in the example that was carried out, the emotional mapping through Aalto University. I'm very sorry if you can hear my dog barking. That may be an issue throughout the course, but I hope you don't mind. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about tarot, which is something that I absolutely love. I find it incredibly intelligent. Tarot is the journey of the soul. It talks of all the different aspects and different stages of the evolution of the soul. And here are two cards from the tarot. We have the Sun card on the left, which is the happiest card in the deck. And this is to do with really aligning with joy, which is what happens when you align with the soul. You just become so happy. Childlike exuberance, childlike happiness, complete freedom. This child is naked. And just basking in the energy of the sun. This is the goal of the spiritual journey. This is what happens when you align with the soul. But you also come into this internal state of the magician. So when we align with the soul, it's about happiness and exercising our magician energy, bringing down higher consciousness down into the physical world consciously. Connecting to source energy and recognizing that we are the magician in our lives. We are the translators of energy through some alchemical processes within, which is the union within. We can bring down information consciously and start creating like a creator, like the creator, and creating real, expansive, abundant experiences in our lives that bring us more joy. And so this is what the purpose of life is, to remember that you are the magician and that the path to becoming the magician is through joy. And joy is something that sometimes we feel guilty about experiencing, but really it's the purpose of us being here, to live a life full of joy and to remind ourselves of our true nature as human and divine, as physical and spirit, as matter and energy, both of which are forms of duality that we've come here to merge. So when duality meets singularity, and I really love this piece of art, the union of duality to come into oneness. It's known as many different things, but some of these terms are merging the lower self with the higher self, masculine and feminine energy union, which is what this course is concerned with, or oneness. And so we're always coming back into the state of oneness. That is how we remember our true nature. That is how we align with the soul. Although this lesson has been about the background, we're going to move into how we do this as the course goes on. But it's known as many names, many terms. 5D meeting 3D, duality meeting singularity. But the goal is to unify within. So let's look at human energy and the duality that extends into human energy. So human energy is made of physical and non-physical energy. The soul, which is non-physical, and physical. Let's break that down. So physical energy is broken down in the human body as electric or masculine energy, which we'll go into more detail further down the line. So we all hold electricity or electric energy. We all hold magnetic energy or feminine energy. And everything in the physical world is held together through this dance between electric and magnetic energy, also known as electromagnetism. The whole of the physical world is held together through electromagnetism. And we also hold this energy, electric and magnetic. Non-physical energy is consciousness or the soul. You can't touch it. You can't weigh it. You can't measure it. But we hold physical and non-physical energy. Physical energy is the duality. Non-physical energy is the singularity. And so what we're always trying to do, like that image of the prism and the light going through it, we're trying to bring these two together in perfect balance so that we can come into alignment with non-physical. When the non-physical energy merges with physical energy, and these two parts become three, or the Trinity, we come into oneness, also known as wholeness, and experience wellness. This is the coming together of the Trinity, electric, magnetic, the soul. So everything in this world is held together in fine balance through electromagnetism. It holds together our entire physical world. The electric, everything is like a magnet, effectively, and the magnetic. So the electric gives out energy, the magnetic draws it in. And this is similar to the image that I showed at the beginning of this lesson of how energy moves. Proven by science. Everything is in a state of flow energetically and magnetically, including the energy in our own bodies, including the energy that's given out by the planet. Everything is in a fine electromagnetic balance. It is the force, the energy that we are predominantly concerned with as physical human beings. And it's the movement of this energy, the union of these two energies that aligns us with the soul. This is what twin flame union is all about. It's bringing them together. Now, this is a science experiment, which I think is really important for you to understand. And I know this is quite a long lesson, please bear with me. But it shows how our energy can shift our reality and how perspective has everything to do with merging these two energies. Your perspective will either bring your energies together or will hold you in duality. So this was an experiment carried out in 1801 by Thomas Young. And it's called the double slit experiment, I beg your pardon. Now, as we saw earlier, the basic building blocks of life are atoms. And each atom has electrons that whizzes around the core, the nucleus. These electrons are the tiniest particles of each atom. And when they move, we get electricity. So electrons moving leads to electricity. Now, in this experiment, they used electrons as the tiniest particles to show how perspective changes the behavior of these electrons. So this is a very crude way of explaining how it works, but gives you some understanding. Now, back in 1801, Thomas Young used what is known as an electron beam gun, or a gun, great big gun with lots of electrons to shoot electrons through space, through empty space, a vacuum. And as they went and traveled through the space, they were broken down using effectively a screen to try and make each electron singular so they can observe the behavior of it. And what they realized was that these electrons, they would travel in a particular way. They would travel like a wave through space. When they were shot out of this gun, electrons would travel in a wave-like pattern, which they would then just record on a screen. So don't worry about this terminology or even the screen here. All you need to know is that when the electrons were shot out of this gun, they traveled in a wave. And they recorded that on the screen. Now, they did the experiment again, but this time they changed one single factor. They had one variable. And the variable was, this time when they shot the electrons through this gun, instead of just shooting them, they shot the electrons out of the gun, but this time they watched. So in the first experiment, nobody was watching the electrons. In the second experiment, somebody using their physical human eyes watched the experiment. Now, observing these electrons changed their pattern. Instead of moving like a wave, they started moving like a particle, like dots through space. This is a very well documented experiment. But the simple act of observation of electrons changes how they move through space, which is amazing, right? Literally, the way you look at something changes the behavior of the basic building blocks of life. The way you look at it, sorry, not even the way you look at it, just by looking at it. So when you observe something, the reality changes. In the same way, when we observe something within ourselves that's hidden, it changes our reality. Now, this is such an important experiment because how you look at things changes what you will experience. So in other words, without observation, these electrons were behaving like a wave, all connected. But with observation, the electrons split off into particles. So in other words, without observation, electrons, or the basic building blocks of life, behave like a wave, all connected. But when you observe it, particles become independent and become the reality you experience. They behaved totally differently. No longer one wave, they became individualized. So another way to look at this is by looking at a tennis court full of tennis balls bouncing on the court. Imagine there are 1,000 tennis balls all bouncing on the court. The bouncing of all of these tennis balls can be seen as the waves. But when you look at one particular tennis ball, any particular tennis ball, and you focus on it, that becomes the only tennis ball on the court. All the others disappear. And so what this experiment tells us is that thousands of realities exist, but the one you focus on is the one that becomes real for you. That becomes the individual particle. And that's why this experiment was so important, because it was proven that the simple act of observing affects what we will experience in life. What we focus on is what we will get more of. And so how we see ourselves and how we see life directly affects our energy flow, the direction that the energy is moving in, and affects what we will experience. So I think this is a good point to end the first lesson. And so what have we covered today? We've covered what energy is and why it's important to look at energy from a health perspective, from a creation perspective. We've looked at where energy comes from. Where does all spiritual energy come from? We've looked at the effects of energy on the body. We've looked at the spiritual journey and what it's really about merging duality to come into singularity or abundance energy, which is how we align with love and abundance, and nature, which is effectively abundant. And through the last experiment, how we create our reality through our perspectives, how important perspectives are. So this is an introduction, and don't worry if you can't remember all of the different aspects, but just try and understand and absorb what they mean. And the next lesson will be about looking more deeply into duality, into masculine and feminine energy. And so thank you for sticking through this lesson, and I'll see you in lesson 2.